Hi, I'm Bridget Sweet. I'm the Assistant Professor of Music Education at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with an emphasis in choral music. As our music students progress through our programs and enter their own classrooms, we emphasize the idea of maintaining a safe environment for our students and being accepting of all students, regardless of different kinds of diversity. However, students are rarely given the opportunity to actually stop and think about how they feel about different kinds of people and how they would feel about different sorts of students in their classroom. That can be problematic. Professor Joan discussed in her book, Finding the Freedom to Teach and Learn and Live, her great bias towards certain groups of people based on her upbringing at home and at school. I'd like to read a passage from this. When I left home to attend college, I met my future husband. I remember our initial conversation because he told me several things about himself that bothered me. I remember the discomfort I felt when I learned he was from Iowa. I was from South Dakota, and you know how those people from Iowa are. He added to my anguish when he said he was from a farm. I was from a ranch, and you know how those farmers are. He further told me that his family belonged to the Farmers Union. Horrors. My family belonged to the Farm Bureau, and you know how those Farmers Union people are. I didn't ask any more questions because I was afraid of what he might say about his home culture. However, I very clearly remember wondering what his politics and religion were. You know how those Democrats and Catholics are. The bottom line is that every student deserves our respect, but we are human, and we hold bias and we hold beliefs based on our own upbringings and our schooling experiences. So without opportunities to reflect and discover on how we feel about different kinds of people, how can we be truly prepared to work with a diverse population and treat all with equal respect? For example, where do you stand on the inclusion of students with disabilities or English as a second language, both in performance classes as well as non-performance music classes? What are benefits of inclusion or challenges? How would you teach and interact with a gifted or talented student who, as a 7th grader, surpasses your professional musical proficiency? What are your opinions of rural or urban students, and could you thrive in such teaching settings? Why or why not? How would you work with openly gay or lesbian students in your music classes? If a student came out to you, how would you react? Does your religious upbringing present a conflict for your working with gay or lesbian students, or Christian or Muslim students, or an atheist student? If you're an atheist, would working with openly religious students be challenging? Psychologist Dorothy Riddle developed a scale that measured the degree of homophobia, and it's often referred to as the Riddle Scale. The official name is the Attitudes Towards Differences Scale. She constructed it as a continuum with repulsion on one end, nurturance on the opposite end, and additional points in between. So if we consider this scale and the different points on this continuum with regard to various groups of students and colleagues in your future or current teaching setting, where do you land when considering different sorts of people? And what are those implications for your interactions with students as well as your teaching? On one end of this continuum is repulsion. Next is pity, then tolerance, acceptance, support, admiration, appreciation, and nurturance. The words tolerance and acceptance are often used in conversations about diversity. However, you will notice that they tend to be on the more negative end of the spectrum. To just tolerate something is very different than embracing it through nurturance. Number of teachers will say that they choose to be colorblind in their classrooms. This idea of being colorblind is that you don't see difference in your students, that you see everyone the same. But that's problematic in itself. And Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings addressed this idea of colorblindness in her book, The Dream Keepers, Successful Teachers of African American Children, and talked about the idea of equality versus sameness. She writes, "Given the significance of race and color in American society, it is impossible to believe that a classroom teacher does not notice the race and ethnicity of the children she is teaching. Further, by claiming not to notice, the teacher is saying that she is dismissing one of the most salient features of the child's identity and that she does not account for it in her curricular planning and instruction. Saying we are aware of students' race and ethnic background is not the same as saying we treat students inequitably. The passion for equality in the American ethos has many teachers and others equating equality with sameness. Although Dr. Ladson-Billings discusses race specifically, this idea crosses over to all kinds of diversity: socioeconomic status, talent, cognitive ability, emotional ability, sexual orientation, culture, race, age. There are a number of implications with regard to this idea of being colorblind. Therefore, you are charged to go forth and learn about who you are and what you believe. The more that you understand about yourself and your personal perspective on the world and the people in it, the more prepared you are to work with others, especially music students, who are similar as well as different from you. For every one of your music students deserves to be treated with the same amount of dignity and respect, regardless of your personal beliefs and bias. And I leave you with a quote from Dorothy Vickers Shelley: "Life is short, therefore I shall be a crusader in the struggle against ignorance and fear, beginning with myself." Thank you.